Good morning. It's delightful to be in Brussels on this wonderful day. Always nice here to experience the Brussels rain. My voice is not what it normally is, so you have to live with this for about 30 minutes. I've got to live with it for a couple of days. So I used to be a geographer, and about 5 years ago I gave up on disciplines, on the grounds that disciplines don't help me understand the world. And I removed myself from a geography department, and I stopped using the word geography, and now I just study city regions. And I don't mind whether I study them from any perspective I want to study, because city regions are really complex things. So taking one disciplinary perspective sort of prevents you seeing things you shouldn't see. A long time ago, I thought I would spend most of my, or all of my academic life working in city regions. And what I've been doing for the last 35 years is developing what I call an integrated or systemic approach to city regions. I started off working on land and property and flows of funds and money into the city. I then moved on to thinking about services and writing an awful lot about services. And then from services, I returned to manufacturing, and from manufacturing into infrastructure. And a lot of my current work at the moment is the role of the citizens in actively shaping and transforming cities from the bottom up, but not working in European cities, but working in African cities and Indian cities. So this presentation is quite strange for me. I've never done a presentation like this before, because the topic sort of flows through 20 years of research. So what I've done is I've picked up various books and papers I've written over the last 10, 15 years and stitched them together. So when I'd finished my work on property development and finance, I then moved into services, and the service work ended up with these two very big books. What's interesting about these two very big books, while they have the word service in the title, a lot of them are about manufacturing. Because wherever you talk about services, you have to talk about manufacturing. You can't separate one from the other. So when countries like England became an industrial economy in the 18th century, it also became a service economy. Both went hand in hand. When London became a global finance centre, that occurred when the UK was becoming a great manufacturing industrial centre. The two went hand in hand. From services, I went into the work of manufacturing, so a very big book on design and the role of design within manufacturing as a way of mediating the relationship between producers and consumers. So what is manufactured, how it is manufactured, how do manufacturers listen to individuals who might be wanting to consume products, and then looking at manufacturing industries in the world economy. And then various other documents that were done for the British government or for the German government, hybrid manufacturing, the reworkings of manufacturing so that manufacturing no longer looks quite like manufacturing as we know it, which is where the title for this presentation comes from. And then also a series of book chapters on 3D printing, digitization, additive manufacturing, and what these will do in terms of transforming manufacturing and making it much more localized. And then more recent work on satellites. All of our lives are completely wrapped around satellites, and yet no one works on satellites. And there is not a set of social science papers on satellites. Well, there is now, because we've published it. So satellites is a piece of manufacturing and services that links and controls every second of our lives. If we switched off the satellites, Brussels would stop functioning in all sorts of interesting and odd ways. So we need to know about the ways in which satellites control, the way in which we access and utilize space, and the way in which the satellites are increasingly producing our space on the planet. And then the paper on the on your right is, I think, an important paper which was published last year, and it's arguing we don't diagnose cities. So what we do is we have politicians producing statements that there's something wrong with our city. We have academics producing statements saying there's something wrong with our city, but no one actually formally does a strategic evaluation of a city as if the city is the patient. Asking the question, here's the city, what's wrong with it? Rather than saying, here's the city, we need to reindustrialize it. Here's the city, it's got an inclusion issue. Here's the city that already got a defined problem. So what we argue in the work on urban diagnostics and reading cities is that a lot of what goes on within cities is like going into your general practitioner, and your practitioner doesn't look at you but hands you a prescription and says, this will solve your problem. So there's no diagnosis. So most of the time we're engaging in policy interventions for political terms or for academic fashion without actually understanding what the real problem is, which is why most policy interventions are only either partially successful or completely unsuccessful. So we can get into the main presentation. So this session and these two days of workshops, the idea of the production of the city, which was emphasized in the first presentation, I think is really interesting. So the city is produced day by day, minute by minute, second by second. We're doing this every time we walk through the city, every time we use the city. We're making trillions of decisions. So Brussels today is the result of trillions of individual decisions. It's also the result of trillions of individual decisions made by people who are dead. Dead developers, dead landowners, dead planners. So we have a city which is the legacy of both the living and the dead. So we have path dependency going on. So decisions that were made 200 years ago shapes what's going on in this city today. And you need to understand those path dependencies that go on. So the production of the city as this everyday process of everyday routines between buildings and infrastructure, which means as the people change, the city changes, but the fabric of the city still gives us that dependency. And then production within the city. So wealth is generated in multiple ways within cities. It's generated by writing contracts. It's generated by academics giving lectures and teaching people and writing things. It's generated by lots of different ways in which production is coordinated within city environments. Now, if you ask me what the major challenge we have in urban cities, the major challenge for me is how can a city be carbon neutral? And the answer is it can't be, but it has to be as carbon neutral as possible. So the primary challenge for policymakers and academics and anybody on this planet is about carbon neutrality. That has a lot to do with what goes on within production and infrastructure systems. But I would argue that the debate on carbon neutrality, we're only on line one of what's going to be a 1,000-page manual, or maybe a manual with unlimited words. We're not even beginning to take that particular topic in any way seriously. Now, if we think about manufacturing, most of us have limited direct contact with manufacturers. If we were to go back to the 1950s and you were to talk to your parents and your parents' relatives and their friends, you would have within that social network quite close interaction with people who are physically directly involved with manufacturing. In 2019, how many people do you know who work physically directly with manufacturing? How many people are on shop floors? How many are physically involved in a manufacturing part of our economy? The answer is very few. So within our cities, manufacturing is still there, but it's become relatively invisible because we as consumers tend to forget that it's there. It's sitting in the bits of the cities that we never visit because why would we want to visit it? We will see them as unsafe, safe parts of the cities, as well as areas of the city where there's no need for us to be there. They have no function as far as we are concerned. So in the 2008 paper, we argued that manufacturing is everywhere, but it's now less visible other than its inventory that we see in transit, on road systems, in lorries, and in containers. But what we need to do is just look and see what is occurring with the manufacturing, where it's located, what it's doing. We have a series of urban myths. So urban myths that cities are not involved in industrialization and that they deindustrialized. In the UK, the date is 1966. So 1966, known for a particular experience with football in Germany, but it's also known as the peak manufacturing year for employment in the UK. From that year, it's been downwards all the way. But the issue with that is a pure myth. So employment has declined, but output in manufactured products continues to increase. Year on year. So what is happening is a purely productivity issue. So manufacturing becomes more productive year on year. The problem with services, as services become more important within our society, for some services, it's harder to put in place productivity improvements. So here I always think, go to a classical dance company, ask them to be more productive, they can dance at twice the speed. They've destroyed the quality of the dance experience. So productivity in services is possible, but more challenging. In manufacturing, it's challenging, but perfectly possible. Post-industrial myth, well, if we're post-industrial, we're not in this building, you're not sitting in those chairs, you don't have laptops and smartphones, all of those are industrialized. Post-Fordist, well, buy a tube of toothpaste. It's produced in a Fordist mass assembly line. Majority of our products we go to and buy in a supermarket, they're mass assembled. They're not flexible, specialized. They're nothing terribly advanced about them. It's the same as setting off a Ford Model T from Henry Ford's production line. Nothing's changed. There's also a view that a quality job is a service job. So a lot of the discussions I was having with the European Commission maybe 10 years ago was saying a quality job is a quality job, irrespective of whether it's a service job or a manufacturing job, a quality job. And any job can be a quality job. You don't have to label it as a service job. And labeling manufacturing jobs as low value or low earning, in many cases, is a misreading and a misunderstanding. So we need to move away from these myths. The other thing we need to think about is that there's an argument that as we move towards a knowledge-intensive society, knowledge intensities in services, well, manufacturing has always been knowledge-intensive. We just claim not to see it as knowledge-intensive. So go along and, if you think it's not knowledge-intensive, go and make your own smartphone. Should be able to do that, straightforward activity, or go and make a pencil, straightforward activity. Go and make a very simple pin. Adam Smith's famous pin, none of us could make one because they're so wrapped around with knowledge intensity. So what we're seeing within manufacturing from the early years of the Industrial Revolution to 2019 and onwards is a continual reworking away from low-value products to more knowledge-intense products, away from rather low-cost products to something which is much more about expertise, customization, and speed, but not forgetting the Fordist products that we all rely upon. So we then need to think about is from manufacturing to production. So I tend not to like to use the word manufacturing anymore, or even the word services. I like to talk about production. So production process consists of a combination of tasks. Some of those tasks are more manufacturing orientated, some of those tasks are more service orientated. So at the moment, I'm engaged in a productive activity. That productive activity involves some service tasks, but I remove the manufacturing components. This thing disappears for starters. The screen disappears. The whole room disappears. So what we need to do is think about the blends of tasks that come together to produce products. So what we're then seeing is this blurring that the presentation has just talked about. So the blurring between manufacturing and services. The first paper that I have about this is 2002, and we went to publish this. The editor of the journal said, sorry, we're not accepting this because it's too revolutionary. No one's going to believe this. You can have an editorial on this topic. And we said, we're not having an editorial because that doesn't give us any value as an academic. We'll try another journal. So Urban Studies accepted this paper. And what this paper is arguing, forget about the terms manufacturing, forget about the term services. All of that is 19th century. Think about how the economy is currently constructed and develop a new language for that. Our only solution to that was to think about value and where value is constructed within production systems and to focus on production and forget about the thinking about simple terms like manufacturing and services. Now what we're seeing is this blurring of the tensions or the boundaries between services and manufacturing, 6 processes of work. One is this shift towards service employment, and that's productivity issue. But we must remember that much of that service employment is directly tied to manufacturing. So what I say to the policymakers in this city region I come from, if we remove remove manufacturing from our city, because we don't want it, because it's unfriendly, it's environmentally unfriendly, it's not very nice, if you want to accept that sort of argument, we remove 40% of all service jobs at the same time, because both are strongly interconnected. We then have this blurring of services and manufacturing. So some service firms produce industrialized services that look like manufactured products. Some manufacturing firms no longer produce products, they produce services. We then have financialization, where organizations are producing things, but really they're more concerned about the managing of money. So they're more like finance organizations than either producers of services or products or whatever else they're doing. They become finance houses that sort of produce other things that we might want to consume. So the average car company most of its value comes from selling finance packages rather than producing cars. So Volkswagen, it's a finance house, it's not a car manufacturer. So you may not have realized this, Germany's really very, very good at selling engineered financial products rather than engineered automotive cars. So it's very, very interesting tension. There are a difference in that. And then we have hybrid products. Your smartphone doesn't work without services, doesn't work without the physicality of the smartphone. It's a hybrid. So what is it? Is it a manufactured product? Is it a set of services, or is it just a hybrid? And then technological innovations that I won't talk about because have already been mentioned, which is 3D printing, additive production systems, rather than subtraction-based production systems. And then the sixth one, the circular economy. And the thing that was perhaps absent from the first presentation is the issue with the circular economy is monomaterials. And what you're going to see is a huge emphasis over the next, well, hopefully 10, 15 years, really sooner, on products that are made from single materials. And you're going to see a trend when you go along and buy a pair of trousers or a jacket. What you will find is that there'll be a deposit you will pay on that product. So it might cost you 80 euros and there'll be a €5 deposit. When you finish with that garment, you'll take it back into the store. The garment will have within it a sensor, it'll be scanned, and you get your €5 back. And the product will be single material, and it will again go straight back to be recycled 100% with no waste. So there will be a move to the circular economy. Only works if we have a mono-material culture, which we don't have at the moment. Even though I'm wondering whether the chairs you're sitting on might be mono-material. I need to turn one over and have a look. So classifying activities as manufacturing or services, to me, is pointless. We just have a production economy with different forms of tasks and different forms of value. This notion of hybridity, so a manufactured product contains different quantities of service inputs, and those service inputs are wrapped into the production process, and they're also wrapped into the product. So what we have is this notion of a hybridized production process and a hybridized products. So a hybrid product, as I've already highlighted, your smartphone, complex combination of service and manufacturing tasks. Remove one, the thing is worthless. So what you have this hybridized thing. So it's a shift towards these production systems that are increasingly hybridizing. Hybrid production systems, the systems that actually produce things. If you go into a factory, and if you went into a factory 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, you would have seen vast numbers of service workers. But they're all classified as manufacturing workers, but they were engaging in service tasks, procurement, marketing, design, purchasing, human resource management, all of those are service functions. So what we're seeing is the ongoing extended division of labor continuing to work through generating more service tasks, producing more complexity in our production systems. So the thing is becoming a much more complex hybrid system. So one definition of manufacturing is a process that produces physical products, but within that process, you have production-related services directly locked into the shop floor. You've got product-related services that are linked into the sale of the product and aftercare and attached computer programming languages, etc. You've got sales and marketing, logistics, production, fabrication, research and development. Now, this is a simple definition. If you're going to produce a better definition, you'd probably have a couple of thousand circles on this particular diagram. But the point is, manufacturing is not just about manufacturing simple products and transforming raw materials into components. It involves lots of other forms of tasks. And what we can then do is make things slightly more complex. So on the one hand, we have the standard mass-produced goods, your tube of toothpaste. On the other hand, you have goods that are no longer goods because they're sold as services. So you no longer buy the good, you buy the service that comes from that particular good. So what we can then do is think about traditional products. The traditional product, you buy it and it's yours until you pass it on for it to be recycled. Ideally, a monomaterial product. You then have hybrid products. Now, these can be sold, and again, you own them and you can pass them on. Or else you can have a product which you don't buy the product is leased to you in some way. You don't own that particular thing. So all of these translation devices that we have ownership of temporarily with our ID cards over there at the back, that represents a form of leasing-based relationship that's going on here. Now, within the shift towards those hybrid leased products, what we're looking at is captive consumers. So if you buy something as a single moment of consumption, so you buy this interesting pointer, it's yours. If it's leased to me by the company, I then have a longer term relationship with that company, and the company has opportunities to sell me additional moments of value. So what happens when you shift a product from being a purely single product that you buy fully, you buy and you take full ownership of, into something that's more service, it gives you an ability to capture greater proportions of value. So Rolls-Royce, the aircraft I flew over from yesterday evening, I'm conscious that the airline doesn't own the engines, because why would it want to own the engines? That's a stupid thing to do. So most engines on aircraft are leased, be they military engines on a defense fighter, be it a standard airline. So in 1987, Rolls-Royce, the British engine manufacturer, decided it would convert itself into a service firm. And this is one of the UK's largest manufacturing firms that sells services. And what it was trying to do is to put in place a whole series of supporting services linked to the engines. So an engine on an aircraft is packed full of sensors. And Rolls-Royce, if it's a Rolls-Royce engine, is monitoring those engines in real time, second by second by second, and it's working out when it needs to intervene to make sure that there's never going to be any downtime on that engine. So what happens with Rolls-Royce is it's transformed itself into a provider of power rather than a provider of engines. So it will enter into a relationship with whoever wants that power. So you want to travel X number of miles for X number of years. We will provide you with that engine power. We won't provide you with the engines, because the engines are going to remain in our ownership. We're going to lease that power to you, and we're going to charge it to you power by the hour, and we're going to make sure that whenever you want it, you can have that. There's going to be no failure. Power will always be there whenever you need it. So here we have the transformation of Rolls-Royce into a comprehensive through-life service arrangement company. So we manufacture engines, we try not to sell them, because selling them doesn't give us maximum profit. Selling them as services maximizes our profit and provides a whole series of advantages to the users of those engines. And here we have a diagram coming from one of the internal reports that Rolls-Royce was producing. And you can see that you've got a range of different things from, if we just sell you the engine, it's the customer responsibility to actually maintain that. And if you go to the right-hand side of this, service provider responsibility, where Rolls-Royce takes complete responsibility, it maintains complete ownership, and is just providing you with the service of transport or movement. So within the Rolls-Royce business model, there are three packages. I'm not going to go through all three, but I'll go through one, of which the one that I was using last night indirectly to get to Brussels was power by the hour, the total care package, where there's an agreed rate per engine flying hour, and this enables customers, i.e. the airliner, to engage in accurate financial forecasting. The package is designed for air fleet flight. Now this is wonderful, because it's wonderful for the air company, it's wonderful for Rolls-Royce, because if there's a sudden downturn and people don't want to buy new engines, it doesn't impact on Rolls-Royce, because anybody who uses an existing engine is providing Rolls-Royce with a stream of revenue, because they haven't sold them an engine, they've sold them a service, or they sold them a hybrid product. Now you may think this is only special to engines. Industrial pumps, I think industrial pumps are really fascinating. I always find it very surprising that people aren't interested in industrial pumps. But if you switch off all our industrial pumps, our human civilization ceases to operate, so we should have some vague interest in industrial pumps. So here's the story of two industrial pump manufacturers. A Chinese one set itself up to copy some American manufacturers' pumps, and reverse engineered the American pumps, made lower value versions of those. Was doing very, very successfully, maintaining significant elements of market share and outcompeting the American firms. 2008, 2009 comes, and the Chinese company retreats into its plant. Half of its shop floor is cleared and converted into tennis courts, because it can no longer sell pumps, because no one's buying new pumps, because no one's building new factories. The American firms, no impact, because the American firms don't sell pumps, they sell pumping time. So they're selling pumping by the hour. They've converted their pumps into services, like Rolls-Royce have converted their engines into services. So why would you ever want to buy an industrial pump? Because if that pump fails, the downtime is going to cost the factory or the city, because they're embedded across cities, significant amounts of cost. So put in place a system where the provider of the pumping technology is responsible for all of that, and they have to focus on making sure that whenever you need that pump, it's available. And that's all about clever sensoring. It's about linking the pumps via the web back into the supplier and making sure that services occurs when it's needed and prior to it's needed, before failure. So within this pumping business model, they operator training, project management, on-site troubleshooting, global repair and maintenance, equipment monitoring, control, advanced diagnostics, asset optimization programming. Now this is hybrid production. So combining service delivery systems with manufacturing and engineering. It's research and development, it's engineering and process management all combined. So if you think about, in industry in the city, well, what does that mean, production in the city? We need to see something really quite complex is going on. Right, we then move on. I like working on either sectors people haven't worked on or sectors people used to work on and no longer work on, because we really need to know a lot about the different varieties of things that are going on within our society. So one of the projects I've been working on is roof tiles and the production process of roof tiles. Really boring product, but really critically important. And the issue with roof tiles is they're really energy intensive. So if you want to actually decarbonize one part of the built structure of your environment, roofs and building materials are one of the places where we need to actually focus our attention. We tend not to be doing that. They tend to be less interesting for the average social scientist. So this was a paper we did about 10 years ago on lock manufacturing. So the city region I come from used to be one of the core global manufacturers of locks of all types, from safe locks to cabinet locks to front door locks. We were making them for 200 years in 6 very small linked villages within the city. So linked villages are small suburbs, villages that have become suburbs. Each village would focus on a particular lock type. So you had a lock agglomeration and a cluster. So 10 years ago, we thought, well, what's happened to the lock industry we know an awful lot about from the 18th century and the 19th century? What's it like now? And the answer is, I emailed the companies and they said, fine, come and talk to us. But we need a reference from your Vice-Chancellor. And I thought, that's odd. First time anybody's asked me for a reference from my Vice-Chancellor, and will my Vice-Chancellor provide me with a suitable reference? So I managed to get past that particular constraint. The reason why I needed a reference is that the surviving lock companies are engaging in the production of high-tech, high expertise, high security locks. So if you want to have something which is very valuable, you want to protect, you will come to one of these companies and they will construct a customized lock. So they don't want anybody on the shop floor. They don't want anybody knowing anything about the types of things they're producing, because these are under the radar. You want to keep it very, very quiet. So what's happening with the lock industry? So heavily urban. So you can go to this part of the city and you can see these lock companies, and if you know what you're looking for, you can see what is a significant lock industry. But what we've identified is 7 different processes that were going on. And what I've done is I've cut the processes from the paper here. So this is precisely as cut. So paper on one side, processes on the other. Customized products. So they no longer sell mass-produced Forger-style products because they haven't got the expertise to do that. So that's done overseas, offshore, it's low value. Production of bundled products and services. Rather than selling you a lock, they sell you a lock service. So part by the hour, lock by the hour. They have developed skills and expertise that are difficult to replicate or transfer. So this is all about how do you design and develop a high security lock? Or how do you develop a lock that is designed for a health environment in which no one who is using that lock could be injured by the lock? So they also specialize in those sorts of locks. So if you collapse into a lock or onto a door handle, locks and door handles that won't injure you. And then the creation of production processes that you can't replicate. So these are things about patents and registered designs and locking down the IPR of their locks. Continuous process and product innovation. So they all say that one of them was delightful because they said the big firms are failing and we're not failing. We've been here since 1760. We're going to be here for another 300, 400 years. The reason why we're so successful is that we're open, and anybody who comes to us with an idea, we'll welcome them and we'll work with them. And we have what they said, and this is their language, all of these mad inventors. They will come to the firm with a wacky idea, and they will, for a couple of years, give them some workbench space, and you may eventually end up with a commercial product. While a big firm will say, sorry, all R&D is inside the firm. We're not going to talk to any of these wonderful, weird, wacky inventors from outside. This firm, perfectly happy to do that because you never know where your next business idea is going to come from. And then flexibility. So anything you want, they will provide for you. Completely and absolutely customized block. Delivery times and nearness to market. So if you want it from China, 3 months. If you want it from the local company, 2 days, 3 days, 6 hours, instantaneous. So here we have two papers juxtaposed, the lock paper on one side, and then a paper on carpets. Now, the carpet paper has some material in it about Belgium and carpet making in Belgium, and the role of the carpet makers in Belgium in destroying part of the UK carpet industry. So there's an interesting Belgium story there. But what's interesting about the carpets and the locks is it's the same story. So both the British carpet firms and the British lock manufacturers, heavily urban, they're surviving through specialization, customization, niche manufacturing, knowledge intensity. Now the carpet paper, which we published 2014, is in two parts. The first one is in old-fashioned carpets. So why do we have surviving carpet firms? And the answer to that is in two parts. One is speed to market. So when a carpet retailer orders a carpet, they want it now rather than in 6 months' time or 3 months' time. So the British carpet manufacturers are competing on speed and rapidity is one of the critical things. The second thing, which I think is slightly scary, is that if you want to order a carpet for your living room that has your face embedded in the carpet, you can upload a photograph and they will weave that carpet for you. And there is a market for this in particular economies. You can imagine which economies we're talking about and which countries we're talking about. That is really quite lucrative and quite high value. So heavily customized carpets that are woven specifically for a particular need, no matter how odd the need might be. Now, the other part of the paper is about technical textiles. Now, technical textiles are textiles that have other functionalities other than clothing. And what we're seeing within the textile industry in the UK is a shift away from conventional textiles to technical textiles. And technical textiles may have issues to do with fire protection, but they may have electronic sensors within them. A whole series of other ways in which you can utilize fabrics. And what we're seeing is a significant number of the conventional textile firms are becoming high-tech, intensive producers of customized technical textiles. Now, the interview that always sticks in my mind is a company that was manufacturing textiles that were going into leggings. And this textile was meant to be a 100% security and safety against cellulite. Not sure I believe their claims. So health-induced properties of a particular textile that was wrapped into it. Wonderful business model, because if you washed your leggings more than 10 or 12 times, the medical nature of the textiles had evaporated, so you then got to repurchase. The leggings are only £100 a pair. So why wouldn't one want to do that as long as you can recycle the leggings? So leggings aren't necessarily what you might think they are. They've now become much more high expertise and technical. So, where does this get us? Where it gets us is that manufacturing and services, you can't separate them. The way in which we produce things is changing. It's always been changing. What I think is particularly critical at the moment, this particular moment in time, is we're seeing acceleration and change. So if you go back 60s, deindustrialization, productivity enhancements within manufacturing, the stripping out of employment within manufacturing, but we're still manufacturing products. That was quite an extended period. So 1966 to 1976 was really the British experience of deindustrialization, so 10 years of adjustment. The adjustment we're going through at the moment, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and that adjustment is going to involve perhaps three things. It's going to involve something to do with Donald Trump and China and trade negotiations and protectionism and free trade. And that's altering some of the global flows of products and raw materials, and we shouldn't discount that. The second thing we're seeing is the onset of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics, and the transformation that is making within our production systems, services and manufacturing is extreme. So British lawyers are using machine learning as a standard practice within their everyday practice. And they've adopted it. So if you employ a lawyer, they need to go through 1 million words, 1 million pages of text. They use machine learning to actually find which pages a real human lawyer needs to read. So all of that is within services. It's already within manufacturing. It's rapidly altering the dynamics of production systems as we speak. Reshoring is occurring, but it's a relatively minor approach within Europe. It's a major issue within the US, partly because of Donald Trump and partly because of energy and availability and access to cheap energy within the US versus various forms of political instability elsewhere. Right, so to conclude, getting to a conclusion, within the 2002 paper where we talked about let's forget about manufacturing and let's forget about services, we had this diagram about cities and where production systems sit within cities. So I pulled this out of the paper on Sunday thinking, doesn't that look quite old? It does look quite old in just the way in which it's stylized and drawn and designed. But what that is saying is that within cities, you've got the wider framework within the city, the economy, the government structure, the policy, the capital markets, the labor markets, the cultural environments, and the technology. But if you want to have a productive city, what you need to do is think about the bottom part of this diagram. And the bottom part is about the knowledge-based ecosystem that's going on within the cities. Where are the sources of learning? Where are the sources of ideas? How are your companies learning? How are they transforming? Who's trying to identify whether there are blockages in the system that are potentially reducing capacity and preventing innovation from occurring and attending to those blockages? In other words, who's doing a diagnosis to work out where there should be appropriate policy interventions? And then before I conclude, the British thing at the moment is manufacturing. The threat is not about globalization. The threat is not about China. The threat is not about the United States. It's very simple. The threat is a local threat. And it's a very simple issue. If you go into the average urban-based small manufacturing company in a British city, the average age of the workforce is going to be 65, 55. So it's an issue of replacement of the workers in that workforce. If you can't replace them, those activities are going to die and your economies will become less diverse and also in some ways less prosperous. So there's an issue in politicians and universities selling knowledge-intensive work too strongly and saying, go and be a service worker, don't work in manufacturing. Why would you want to work in manufacturing? Forgetting that manufacturing's changed. Because manufacturing can be high value, it can be high expertise, it can be high knowledge-based. So most of the firms are having major problems with aging workforces, hard to fill vacancies, and we have what I call this erosion from below. So erosion from above, globalization, erosion from below. It's our own problem, it's our city region problem. We're the cause of that problem, we're the solution to that problem. If we don't deal with it, what we're going to find is a significant alteration within our local economic base. Conclusion, manufacturing being transformed. Try to avoid using the word, talk about production. We have this erosion of manufacturing into the hybridized production systems, so they're very service-orientated, and then at the extreme element, hybrid products. We then have firms that are manufacturing, but they compete in expertise and knowledge. rather than products, in the way in which a law firm or an accountancy firm or a consultancy firm competes. And we have urban-based innovation ecosystems, absolutely critical for everything that's going on in related to production, and then this real threat. So it's not a globalization threat anymore, it's a local threat. So work out what your local threat is that might alter the industrial base and the production base of your city and find appropriate local solutions. Right, end of presentation.